One of the more challenging things that you learn as you go about in a research career is learning that the data itself is not necessarily the end all and be all. And it's a real challenge with sort of communicating this and thinking about it because we have a tendency, at least I do, is to get enamored with the data. And the problem with it, for anybody that does, both theoretical and empirical work, the challenge is, the theoretical work is really, really difficult, but then the empirical work of actually gathering the data, cleaning it up, doing stuff to the data, it takes a great deal of work. And it is challenging to clean things, like to get it ready and presentable. And the real struggle is not getting enamored with the fact that you've put in all of this effort and gone through all of this great deal of just working through things when in fact the sort of theoretical part of it is. So I don't believe it's more important in terms of, you know, thinking about the world, but the world thinks it's more important. The research community thinks it's more important, the sort of theoretical stuff. Um, and you have to focus on that rather than the empirical stuff and not get enamored with it. And the real challenge is sort of balancing these so you don't go in either direction too much. And it's really difficult to do this, particularly if you're kind of more on the empirical side, where you just, you're pondering about the world, and you start collecting data and you start going down that direction. You realize that, man, getting real world data, even though it seems easy, it's actually really hard. There is a lot of steps that happen to get there. I was watching this YouTube video about index funds, and in principle, it's really easy to actually do index funds. You just take a proportion of all of the firms that are in the stock market based on whether based on some weighting, right? So you might take an average based on the sort of market cap, and then you take a quarter of a percent, or 3% might be General Electric or whatever. But then when you actually go and empirically do this, you realize that, man, it is a really difficult thing to actually do, because there's trades that are being done every day. There's messy data. There's all sorts of complexities to it, and you don't even know what should you weight it? Should it be based on market cap, or the price, or should be equally weighted, should be value weighted? Like there's just a lot of nuance to it that really makes it difficult to actually do. When you start looking at it, when you actually start trying to do this, you begin to realize, like, wow, this is challenging. And that's with the empirical data. When you actually do it, you realize it's extremely challenging. But the problem is that anybody, and this is a huge chunk of the world, anybody that doesn't do any empirical data stuff and actually manipulate, actually does data stuff, they do not get it. They do not understand that it's difficult and challenging, and it will take a great deal of work, right? So the challenge is that will be neglected. It's like, the age old thing that I think about is, like, somebody just says, well, just go build an app about it. Well, good luck. Good luck trying to just build an app. When you actually start to do it, you realize that it's far more complicated than you ever imagined. It's not what you see in the movies. And it's very difficult. So the same with real world data man, it takes a great deal of effort. It's incredibly difficult. and people just don't understand unless you're part of it, unless you actually sit down and you're doing it. Then you realize that you're going to run into all these problems. Just to, today I was trying to download some data, and the amount of programming that I had to do a really simple task of just downloading a little bit of data required, at least a few hours. And I'm very competent at this moment with programming. Um, I would sort of consider myself near expert level, and it still takes a lot of work, right, to actually do this kind of stuff. And I just want people to realize this, that if you are doing the empirical data, first of all, the world is not going to recognize the work, right? They're not going to understand how hard and difficult it actually is. And then on top of it, the thing that people are interested in are almost always the sort of theoretical stuff. And so this is where you have to really start thinking about what you want to do. It's not necessarily the data that's important. And that's the challenge. But the data is very seductive and interesting. And I mean, it is the most interesting part because that's where you get a lot of insight. But at the same time, the world doesn't recognize it. And so you have to take that step back and realize, what are we doing here? And recalibrate as often as you possibly can, right? Like, not get wedded to particular data. And that's where I'm become a lot more. Years ago, I would spend months and months and months in programming and doing all that kind of stuff, like just so much time, trying to get things perfectly. Now I'm much more of the let's do it quick and dirty and see what happens, see what the reaction actually is, and sort of save the amount of time that you're doing something for things that are more productive. And so I tend to only do what, I tend not to do too much data analysis and all that kind of stuff as much as I nearly would, because you don't know what is sort of going to impress on the audience that you're looking at. And that's the most important thing, because the data is interesting, it's amazing, but the audience does not recognize that. And you have to sort of balance the effort and challenges of getting that data versus, um, versus the reward of getting it and sort of getting people to buy what you're doing. So, all right. Well, hopefully you learned a little bit. Take care and have a wonderful day.